Good morning, fourth graders. This is lesson 9.6. It is Wednesday, April 29th. Coming to the end of April here. Almost there. All right, this is called add fractional parts of 10 and 100. So you guys know how to add fractions already, so that's done. We know how to do that. So this section is just putting together what you know about adding fractions and what you know about equivalent fractions. But we're still only dealing with tenths and hundredths. So it's kind of just putting some things together. So hopefully after a few problems, it catches on for you. I'm on page 527, and I'm going to do the unlock the problem. It says the fourth grade classes are painting designs on the squares to make a mural. Mrs. Kirk's class painted 3/10ths of the mural. Mr. Becker's class painted 21/100ths of the mural. What part of the mural is painted? So what I want you to do is put a star next to this paragraph right here and circle it, because this is something I want you to keep in mind. It says you know how to add fractions with parts that are the same size, which you do. You very much do. You can use equivalent fractions to add fractions with parts that are not the same size. So when we get down to the problem, it's 3/10ths plus 21/100ths, because it's her class plus his class. They don't have the same denominator. We have never added fractions that don't have the same denominator before. But you can use what you've been learning from the last couple of days to help you figure that out and find a way around it. So it says write 3/10ths and 20/100ths as a pair of fractions with a common denominator. Well, there's nothing we can multiply 100 by to get 10. But there is something we can multiply 10 by to get 100. So we can use that idea to create an equivalent fraction of 3/10ths that mirrors the denominator of this one. So it says, think 100 is a multiple of 10. So use 100 as the common denominators, which is what I just said. We got 3/10ths equals 3/10ths times, what times 10 gives us 100? 10. Whatever we do to the bottom, we must do to the top. So 3 times 10, which is 30. So 30/100ths of the mural is painted. Oh, wait, no. That's for your final answer. I got a little ahead of myself there. So basically what we're doing is we're taking 3/10ths and swapping it out for 30/100ths. 3/10ths fill up the same amount of space as 30/100ths, which is what lets me do that. I couldn't do it if they didn't take up the same amount of space, but they do because they're equivalent fractions. So it gets swapped out into the problem. 30/100ths instead of 3/10ths plus 21/100ths, which was in the problem. 30 plus 21. Now they have the same denominator, so we can just go ahead and add the numerators together. 30 plus 21 is 51. So 50/100ths of the mural is painted. So remember, you can't add unlike fractions. You can't add fractions that don't have the same denominator. So in these problems, they're going to give you a mixture. So you have to find what's the easiest. Is it easier to take the 100 and take it down to a 10? Which you can't always do, because if you divided 100 by 10, you could get 10. But if you divide 21 by 10, you're not going to get 3. So it's usually easier to go from the tenths to the hundredths with these problems. All right, so at the bottom of the page, let's try this. 4/100ths plus 1/10. So again, we have to have the same denominator. So I'm going to take the 1/10 and turn it into a fraction with a denominator of 100. So if I multiply 10 by 10 to get the 100, I also have to do that to the top. And I get 10/100. Now, last week we talked about how if you have a fraction that has a 0 in the numerator and a 0 in the denominator, you can reduce them down and you get 1/10, and that's what we started with. You don't have to reduce here, but I want you to see how they compare. So that's how you know you've done it right too with this kind of problem. All right, so then it says then you can add from there. So now I'm going to swap out the 1/10 for something over 100. I figured out that something is 10/100. So 10/100 plus 10/100 is 20/100. Oh, what did I do? Oh, hang on. Wait a minute. I'm like, well, that's true. However, this is odd. Your book actually took your answer and put it in here. Sorry about that. And then you had to fill it in from the problem. That's unusual. Usually your book like gives you what's in the problem and you have to fill in what you got. Whatever. So then we add those together. 4 plus 10 is 14. Sorry about that, guys. And then they write it out here for you too. So that was kind of weird, but yeah. So basically you're trying to change them so they have the same denominator so you can actually add them, because you can't add them until they have the same denominator. So then they kind of throw in this whole decimal thing too. So this is where you have to take what you know about how fractions and decimals are connected and put it together with the adding and subtracting piece. So we've got, I guess it's just adding, but 528 is where I'm at right now. And I'm going to do this example. So let's see here. Sean lives 0 and 5/10 mile from the store. The store is 0 and 25/100 mile from his grandmother's house. Sean is going to walk to the store and then to his grandmother's house. How far will he walk? So he starts out at his house and he goes to the store, and that is the 0 and 5/10. And then he goes to his grandmother's house from the store, which is 0 and 25/100 of a mile. So you're going to add those together to see how far he went all together. So with these ones, we have not learned how to add decimals. And honestly, you're not really going to learn that in 4th grade. That is more 5th grade. In 5th grade, you learn adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with decimals. So what we're going to do, because we're given an addition problem with decimals, we're going to use what we know to help us solve this instead of trying to learn something new. So what they want you to do is they want you to write both decimals as the sum of fractions. So we're going to swap out each of these decimals for its equivalent fraction. So I know that the 0 is, or this decimal is 0 is 5/10. 0.5 is 5/10 because the 5 is in the 10ths place. So I'm going to put the 5 over 10 to represent 5/10, which is equivalent to that. This is 0.25, which is 0 and 25/100. So I'm going to do 25/100 in fraction form. Then I can put these down here. Instead of adding them as decimals, I can add them as fractions. Now, hopefully in your head, you're saying, wait, Mrs. Spears, you can't add those together because they don't have the same denominator. You are right. So now we got to do like we were doing on the other page. We got to take our new problem and make sure they have the same denominator before we can add them together. So let's see here. So we've got 5/10. I'm going to convert that to hundredths. So I'm going to do the times 10 again. So now I've got, so it says write the problem again. So instead of 5/10, I'm going to write 50/100 because it's the same thing, just with the hundredths in the denominator, plus 25/100. And then you add them together. So 50 plus 25 is 75 over 100. And then the last step is to write the sum as a decimal. So this is 75/100. So I'm going to put 0 and 75/100. So Sean walked 75/100 of a mile. Now, so basically with this, what they had you do is they had you turn your decimals into fractions, find your common denominator so you can add them together, and then take your fraction answer and turn it back into a decimal. Like I said, in 5th grade, you're going to learn how to just straight up add these together. But here they want you to really understand like why just adding these together when you learn it in 5th grade works, how it works compared to fractions, because what you've been learning about a lot more is fractions. So they're trying to help you make some of those connections together. So it says, try this. Find 0.25 and 0.40. Add them together. So I'm going to turn both of these into fractions. So this is 0 and 25/100. So I'm going to turn that into a fraction, 25/100. Plus, this is 0 and 40/100. And then you add them together because they have the same denominator. You check that first, and if they do have that, you're good to go. You add those together, you get 65 out of 100, which equals $0.65 because it has a dollar sign. Now, some of you may have gotten to this one and you're like, wait a minute, that's a 4 in the 10ths place, so that would be 4/10. And you're right about that. But I kind of skipped the 4/10 stage and went straight to the 40 hundredths because I knew I'd be multiplying that by 10 anyway to get a common denominator. So, you know, because of the 0 also in the hundredths place allowed me to think that way as well. But if you got 4/10 here first, then you just have to change that into hundredths before you can add. All right, page 529. Let's try some of these out. It says find 7/10 plus 5/100. Again, we have to make sure both of those are the same denominator. So it says write the add-ins as fractions with a common denominator. So I'm just going to pop down the 5/10 because it's already in the hundredths, so or 500, sorry. Pop it down there because it's already ready to go. And I'm going to turn this 7/10 into a hundredths. If you need to go over here and write that out, you can. 7/10 times 10 times 10 is 70 over 100 because you're trying to get it in hundredths. But hopefully by the end of this lesson, you can convert that quickly in your head. You just add a 0 basically to it. So then this becomes 0 and 0. So you have 70 over 100. Just like I said earlier, you could reduce the zeros. You can put them back on too. So 70 plus 5 is 75 over 100. So my answer is 75 hundredths. Now these ones don't tell you if they want your answer in fraction or decimal form. Usually they tell you, but I noticed on this page they don't. So to determine whether or not your answer should be a fraction or a decimal, look at what the original problem is. With this one, my original problem was in fractions. So my answer, I left it in fraction form. When you get to some of these down here, these ones are fractions, so I'm also going to leave those in fraction form. But these ones are in decimal money notation, so I'm going to leave them in the same that I started with. So that's usually a good rule of thumb in math anyway. If you're not sure what form to leave your answer in, check out what form your problem was in, because they probably want them to stay the same. So we look at these ones. Again, same thing. I'm going to multiply by 10 to turn this tenths into a hundredth. So 1 times 10 is 10. 10 times 10 is 100. And I re-add them back together. And I get 21 over 100. So I'm going to leave it as 21 over 100 because that's what my problem is. My problem's in fraction form. Same thing with this one. I have 36 over 100 plus, if I multiply by 10, so I can get the 100 down here, multiply by 10 on the top, and then I can add those together. And that would be 86 out of 100. Again, leaving it as a fraction because I have a fraction problem. Here's where things get a little tricky. They give it to you in decimal form. They actually give it to you in money form, so make sure that's why they go ahead and give you the dollar sign and the answer. So these you're going to have to turn them into fractions first before you can add them and then turn it back into a decimal. So this is 0 and 16 hundredths, so 16 cents. And we write cents in fractions as 16 over 100 because it's 16 cents out of the 100 cents needed to make a dollar. Plus 45 hundredths, so 45 cents out of 100 cents. These are already both at with 100 as a denominator, so you don't have to go through the step of changing your denominator. And that equals 61 out of 100. But I can't leave my answer like that because my original answer, or my original problem, was in decimal form. So I'm going to turn that into a decimal. And with that being 61 cents, I'm going to do 0 and 61 cents, or 0 and 61 hundredths, same thing. All right, so I've got this one. Again, we're still in money form, so I'm going to turn it to a fraction, turn it back into money form. This is 8 hundredths, 8 cents, which means we're going to write it as 8 over 100, 8 hundredths, plus 88 cents, which is the same thing as 88 cents out of 100 cents. And then I'm going to add those together. 88 plus 8 is 96 out of 100, which means I'm going to do 0 and 96 cents. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video. because I want you to try these ones on your own. Okay, these ones are a little tricky. Give them your best shot, see how you do, and then I'll show you the answers when you unpause it. All right, so here's your answers. So we've got, we're going to add these two fractions together. They don't have a common denominator, so I'm going to turn them into something that does have a common denominator. I want them both to have 100, so I'm going to put 100 in the denominator. I had to multiply 10 by 10 to get 100, so I have to multiply 6 by 10 as well. Add those together, and I get 85 out of 100. I'm going to leave that as it is because it's my fraction, or my questions in fraction form, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Same thing with this one. Make sure you have a common denominator. So we're going to multiply this one by 10 on the top and the bottom. And now I can add them together. I'll just write it up here. 77 out of 100. This one is in money form, so I'm going to turn these both into fractions. It's 55 cents written as a fraction is 55 hundredths, plus 23 cents written as a fraction is 23 hundredths, which equals 78 out of 100. That's 78 cents, so I'm going to do 0 and 78 cents, or 0 and 78 hundredths. This is 19 hundredths because it's 19 cents, 19 out of 100 cents. This is 13 hundredths. Add them together. And I get 32 out of 100, which is the same thing as 0 and 32 cents. All right, so these ones, you kind of had to think it through to see what it would be like. So I know I can't add these uncommon denominators, so I had to think backwards and think what this would have been like as a hundredth place. So they both were 100. Then I had to figure out, okay, what plus 20 is 60, and that would be 40. But because this wants me to do it in tenths, I can just knock off those zeros. Okay, I can reduce the zeros down. Again, if you were to work backwards, like you did with these other problems up here, you have 20/100 plus, multiply this by 10, 40 over 100. 20 plus 40 is 60, and that's where they got that from. Same thing with this one. I'm going to think through, okay, if I had this in hundreds form, it'd be 20 over 100 plus something over 100. What plus 20 is 90? That would be 70. So my missing number is 70. All right, this is the last one I'm going to do with you for today. I want to make sure I keep your video close to 20 minutes so you have time to work on your paper. It says, Jerry has 1 gallon of ice cream. He used 3/10 of a gallon to make chocolate milkshakes and 4 40 hundredths gallon to make vanilla milkshakes. How much ice cream does Jerry have left after making the milkshakes? So first we have to figure out how much he actually used. So if he used 3/10 of a gallon to make chocolate milkshakes, 3/10 of a gallon to make chocolate, and he used 40 hundredths of a gallon to make vanilla, I'm going to add those together to figure out how much ice cream he used altogether. But again, I can't add these because they don't have a common denominator. So I'm going to swap this out for 30 over 100, add my zeros in, plus 40 over 100. Now I can actually add them because they have the same denominator. 30 plus 40 is 70 over 100. But again, I'm going to put this actually, it doesn't matter if you leave it in fraction or decimal form because it uses both in there, so use whatever you want. But it says how much ice cream does he have left? That's how much ice cream he used. So if I'm going to do a little twiddly line so you can see where the second part of this is. He used 1 whole gallon of ice cream. and he used up 70/100ths of the gallon. Difference between that, I'll swap this out for 100 over 100 to make it easier to subtract. We haven't done this for a while, but you have done this before. 100 minus 70 is 30 over 100. So you can leave it as he's got 30/100ths of a gallon left. You could also reduce it if you wanted to and have 3/10 of a gallon since you had tenths to begin with. You could also turn that into a decimal, which would be 0.30 or 0.3. So there's different ways you could have left this. I chose to just leave it in this form because it doesn't really tell me either way which way it prefers. So, all right, guys, that's the end of your video for today. If you join me for Zoom, again, I'm talking about on April 29th. April 29th at 1 o'clock, you join me for Zoom. I will work on this page with you. This is page 531. And this is your homework assignment for this lesson. So I'll see you then. If not, send me a message if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you in the next video. See ya. Bye.